Hello, this is Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow. I'm so happy to be back with my cooking podcast. It has been a busy summer and I've been experimenting and exploring a lot of new things for you. And one of the things that I want to share with you today is how to make a very simple homemade bread that most people can eat. Now, as you know, I like to experiment with a variety of grains, and of course I've taken you through einkorn and a lot of other things, millet and quinoa. Well, I haven't really fully investigated rye. So we're going to start with making a very simple rye bread today. One that you can do at home, very easy from what my experiments so far have been showing. And I hope that you enjoy making this for yourself and it's as easy for you as it is so far for me. I have right here in my bowl already ground flour because I like to start off with the whole rye berries themselves. Now these are organic, and the reason I like to start off with the berries is because when you get the flour from the shelf, you really never know how long it's been sitting there. But it's up to you. You can get the flour. If you get the flour, you don't use it right away. Be sure you put it in your freezer. But I use the berries. I've also been grinding in my little spice grinder, and as you know, it does take a little bit of time to make that happen. And this is still a little too coarse. Now when you make your rye bread, you want your flour as light and fluffy as possible. So I'm going to grind it just a little bit more. So it's almost like chalk dust in here. I think that's about good. Yeah, that looks good. Now, what I have learned is there is a difference between light rye and dark rye. And dark rye is a coarser ground flour. And if you can only get the flour, and if you get dark rye, you should put that in a sieve or a strainer and shake it so that the little pieces stay in your sieve and the flour goes down below into your bowl. And that will help your rye bread to rise and make a nicer loaf. So what we're going to do to start off is I have in here, I've measured by grams. Now I've shown you my scale before, and the scale you can make go to ounces or grams depending upon how you push the button in the back. And most professional cooks do use a scale and they go by grams because they found out that a cup is not always a cup or a teaspoon is not always a teaspoon. So if you weigh it out, you will get better results. Now, as a general rule, I tell you I don't really measure too much, a little of this and a little of that. But when I do something like this with the bread, I want to be sure that I have the correct ingredients and the correct proportions, because that will help your bread either be a success or not. If you don't have the scale, I think I paid somewhere between $20 – $25 for mine. If you don't have the scale, I'm using approximately 4 cups of the light rye flour. So 4 cups, but again, a cup isn't always a cup. In the center, you're going to want to make a well, and I have approximately 2 teaspoons of instant yeast in here. If it's not instant, you want 3 teaspoons, or 4 teaspoons, and if it's fresh, you're going to want 12 teaspoons. So that goes in the center, and in here I have approximately 500 grams of water, or 2 cups of water. I'm going to put about half of it in here, and I'm going to just let it sit for about 15 minutes. And I'm finding out that the secret with working with rye flour is that you don't do much with it, believe it or not. It's not like wheat, which has a lot of gluten that needs to be kneaded. The less you do with this, the better your bread is going to turn out. That's so far what I found out. So I'm going to put about half of that in there for now. I'm going to let it sit for 15 minutes, and then we're going to come back and we're going to add the rest of the ingredients, and I'm going to show you what else to do. Okay, now we've waited our 15 minutes. You can see that the yeast is starting to proof a little bit from the little bubbles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put in the salt. I have here approximately 1 tablespoon of sea salt, or about 6 grams, or 12 grams altogether. And add the rest of the water, which we already discussed. And I'm just going to gently stir it together. Again, it's not like wheat. We're not going to be kneading it. We just want to stir it together and make sure that everything is moist. Now, if you have if you have rye, that your whole grain, and it's very dry, or your dough is starts to break apart, then you're going to want to add water a little bit at a time, maybe a tablespoon at a time. You don't want to put too much in there, just enough to make a very soft dough. You can see it's just almost like a heavy, thick cake batter. So I'm going to leave this sit for just a second. Now, I have made this into 2 smaller loaves before, and today we're going to experiment. You're going to experiment with me. We are going to make it into 1 loaf and see what happens. So I'm going to let this sit for half a second. We're going to come over here. Now, this is actually a 2-pound loaf pan. If you have a 1-pound loaf pan, then you're going to divide this into 2 loaves. So I'm going to take some kind of a hard fat to keep it from sticking. I've chosen a stick of butter. We're just going to go around the outside, and this will make it easy to take it out of your pan after it's baked. So just get some good butter in there. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to wet your hands so that the dough will not stick to your hands, but you can form it into a loaf where we're going to put it in here. Now, one of the secrets is after we've put it in the pan, we are not going to touch it. You're not going to try and pat it out, make it even. You're not going to try and spread it into the corners. Once you have your loaf, you're gently going to set it in there, and that's going to be that. So let me wet my hands a second here. Okay, now my hands are wet. We're just going to pick up this loaf, scoop it out, and you can see it's pretty loose. That's the way we want our rye bread. Okay, and we're going to gently shape it into some kind of a loaf. This is why I made the smaller loaves before, but you're helping me with this experiment, so here we go. It's going to go into the pan, and it basically is the form that it's in. That's what we're going to leave it. And you can see my handprints in here. That's how it should be when you're done with it. Okay, after you set it in, if you can't see handprints in it, you can't see fingerprints, then it's probably too dry. But like I said, it's going to be very, very soft. And I'll be sure and get everything in there. But I'm not going to spread it around. It's very tempting to do that. So you're going to have a better looking loaf in your mind. But you just want to leave it as it is. So let me again wash my hands. Now the next step is you're going to cover it and you're going to let it sit for 2 to 3 hours. And what I did with my rye, and seems to be working, is this is a garbage bag, not a clean one of course. We're going to just set it inside of the bag because as it rises, if you have plastic wrap on it, it might stick. And so if you don't have something like this, what you can do is you can put seeds or something like that on the top of it. We're just going to close it up with a twisty, and I'm going to put it in a non-drafty place in my kitchen, and I'm going to let it sit for about 2 or 3 hours. Now it's not going to rise like wheat bread, but there will be some rise in there. We're going to come back and we're going to check it, and then we'll bake it, and with luck it will turn out. You never know with bread, but the thing is it's always going to taste good. So it's homemade, remember, it's not bakery. It's going to look a little bit different, but what I've done so far I'm happy with. Hopefully you will be happy when you see how this one turns out as well. Okay, let's take the bread out of the oven. And you know what, I realized I was so excited to put it in, I forgot to show you, but you can see that it rose very beautifully here. And I'm just going to pop it out of the bread pan. I baked it at 395 for about 30 minutes. Just going to take it here, turn it out. See, it's browned really nice. You can see the steam coming off. I'm going to put it over here on my bread cooler. And I'm going to cut it for you so you can see how beautiful it is inside. Remember, rye is very, very dense, but this really makes a lovely loaf. See how nice that is inside. So, and then when you let it cool, it's going to be a little less gummy, which it is right now, but that's from it being hot. But that with some butter on it and some fruit or whatever you like on it is really a beautiful, beautiful loaf. So I want to thank you very much for joining me, Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow at expansions.com. Bye-bye.